Greetings, everyone. Happy spring and happy Rosicrucian New Year. Yesterday began Rosicrucian year 3377. Now we're going to begin our questions and answers for this month. Here's the first question. Nothing like starting with something really big. When does consciousness enter the body? So the Rosicrucian teachings tell us that consciousness enters the body with the first breath. And in the air around us, there is oxygen. And there's also an essence that is called cosmic essence, which is the life-giving essence. It's when we breathe this in, it brings life to a being. Some other traditions call cosmic essence prana or chi, or there are other names for it. So consciousness enters the body with our first breath. Now, this next part of the question I found very thought-provoking. When does a body become aware of consciousness? When does a body become aware of consciousness? What a great question. I don't believe anybody can know for sure, because we don't remember the earliest moments of our life on Earth. We'd have to be able to remember as a child. The Rosicrucian monographs give us some excellent information on this topic, though, and we can come to our own conclusions. Here is some of the information presented. According to Rosicrucian tradition, the soul does not enter the body until the moment of birth, when the infant inhales their first breath. Near the end of the 3rd month of pregnancy, the soul personality begins to foresee into which family it will incarnate. Just before birth, it hovers near the mother while awaiting incarnation. And this subject is covered pretty extensively in the 3rd degree and also in the 8th degree of our monographs. And here's some more information. On one hand, we possess a soul, which we have called the human soul, and which is absolutely pure and perfect as it emanates from the universal soul. So we have the soul. On the other hand, we possess a soul personality that gradually evolves toward this purity and perfection, and therefore needs to reincarnate many times. At the moment of birth, a mystical phenomenon is produced which cannot be objectively perceived. These two souls, so the soul and the soul personality, merge as a result of mutual attraction and combine in a single spiritual energy. They infuse the body of the newborn at the same instant. That is, when the infant takes the first breath of air and receives the impulse of the positive polarity of vital life force. Throughout our life, these two souls interpenetrate and constantly interact with one another. And again, this happens with the first breath. So it's just such a great question of when do you become aware of when you are conscious? And I invite you now to close your eyes and take 3 deep breaths, becoming more relaxed with each exhalation. Now, imagine what it was like for you to come to life with the first breath. Where were you before? Where were you before your first breath? Do you have any recollection of this? Now, consider what lessons you have learned by incarnating in your particular family. And maybe your life experience is not all positive. And just think, are there any lessons any really profound lessons that you have learned by being incarnated in the family you were born into? Maybe your experience has been positive. Maybe it has not been positive. Maybe your lesson was forgiveness or learning to understand other people. Again, the Rosicrucian monographs tell us that we choose the family we're born into. And that also means the country we're born into. Do you have any idea why you incarnated in the country you were born in? What lessons, what opportunities for learning did your birth country provide for you? Now, the same for your gender. When you chose to incarnate into a body, why did you choose the gender that you did? Do you have any recollection of what lessons may have been available to you because of the gender you chose to be born into? And how about your race? Were there special opportunities for learning because of the race of the family and the baby that you chose to be born into? So go back in time to the earliest point possible in this life. Imagine that you are in whatever state you were in before the infant took their first breath. And now feel yourself conscious that you're in this world. Make a note of any impressions you may receive of your very earliest memories. You were an infant, you took your first breath, and now you are a live human being. Now bring your attention back to here and now. A few months ago, we released the new Rosicrucian Parenting App, and it includes lessons for expectant parents and new parents. And we really encourage you, if you're an expectant or new parent, or if you know someone else, even if they're not a Rosicrucian, to share this loving resource with them. It is based on the Child Culture series written by H. Spencer Lewis. And it's a way to attune with the child who you're bringing into the world, who you're welcoming into the world, and to help to raise that child. And we've put in the chat a link so you can download this app. And all of these resources that I'm mentioning are free. The Rosicrucian Order provides these precious resources for the benefit of humanity. And this one especially, these child culture series lessons are just so sweet, and not just for raising a little one, but also just for taking care of ourselves. They're relaxing to read or listen to. We have them both as written lessons and as short meditations. So everyone's invited to listen or read the Rosicrucian Parenting App. So again, we've put the link in the chat, and it's important to install the latest software update on your device, on probably your phone, before installing the parenting app. This is a brand new app, so you want to have, you don't want your software to be out of date. It works much better when you have the latest software update, which, it's always free. You just want to keep your device up to date. So life begins with the first breath, and death occurs with our last breath. And a lesson that I really appreciate in the Rosicrucian teachings is preparing for our next life. The lessons say that if you want to experience something in your next life, start studying it now. If you visualize in your next life you're a great pianist or a great singer or great architect or teacher, start studying it now, no matter what your age is. I'd like to share a little, some information I find really interesting. Some of you may be familiar with the woman named Anna Mary Robertson Moses, also known as Grandma Moses. She was an American folk artist who started painting when she was 78 years old, and she became a phenomenon. Before then, she entertained herself and her friends by making needlework pictures and quilts showing colorful scenes of farm life. And then when she was 78, her arthritis was so painful that she couldn't embroider anymore. So her friends encouraged her to paint, and she had an amazing talent for folk painting. She exhibited her work internationally into her 90s, and she painted until a few months before her death at the age of 101. So you go, girl, Grandma Moses. Just a beautiful inspiration for us. So what do you want to experience in your next life, in your next incarnation? And what can you do right now to engage with that energy, to make that a part of your story? Can you start studying that subject? Can you start volunteering somewhere doing that? Again, what do you want to experience in your next life? And what can you do right now to begin to engage with that? Here's our next question. What is AMORC's view on the new laws concerning IVF, in vitro fertilization, and IVF, frozen embryos, being humans? So we just discussed the Rosicrucian perspective on when life begins, and the monographs do not discuss this subject of laws regarding in vitro fertilization or frozen embryos. The Third Temple degree, though, spends a lot of time instructing us on human development so that we can be familiar with this amazing process that takes place, the development of the embryo. But again, there are no political statements anywhere in the Rosicrucian teaching, so we're not commenting on laws. And this subject in particular is not covered in the monographs. This next question was asked previously, and I'm going to address it again. What is the significance or purpose of the mirror in our practice in our sanctums? And tonight's presentation by Julian Johnson is going to touch on this subject. He is presenting on a number of Rosicrucian practices, and including the science and psychology of looking at oneself and on self-reflection. So I encourage you to join tonight's teleconference, the symposium presentation, which will also be recorded. And Julian always brings great research and enthusiasm in the subjects that he presents. And we've talked a little bit about what he'll be presenting tonight, and I'm looking forward to what he's going to be sharing. What I had shared previously was that we have a mirror in our sanctum, and the sanctum is the place where we study our Rosicrucian lessons. So we want to get the most out of what we're reading and meditating on and experiencing. So if you want to get the most from something, what would you do? And where would you go? So you probably would not be on your couch in front of the TV. You probably wouldn't be on a bus. You would be somewhere quiet so that you could place your entire attention on what you were working with. So someplace secluded and quiet with no interruptions, no distractions. It's just you and your Rosicrucian lessons and your experiences that will spring from it. We receive suggestions on how to set the conditions for the most profound experience possible, to set the conditions even for mystical experiences. So we would have a place that's only used for our mystical work. And you've no doubt felt, if you've set up a sanctum, a place just for your mystical work, that it feels different just entering it. The space feels different. It can even just be a small corner of a room, but you don't use that small corner of the room for anything else. You use it just for your mystical work. And we also start to feel changes within ourselves. We feel the intention of what we are there for. And I feel like my sanctum periods are just one continuous sanctum period. I'm in my sanctum, and then I go and do other things, and then I come back and have another sanctum period, and I'm building the vibrations in that place and in me with every sanctum period. Also, candles are used, and there's been a lot of research on how candles change the vibration of a place, and they certainly they open us up to other possibilities. The candle flame is somewhere between the material and the spiritual, the material and the non-material. So when we are in our sanctums and it's just us and the universe, and if we are looking to go within, a good place to look is into our own reflection. So that is one purpose of having the mirror in the sanctum. To better understand ourselves, we might want to look at ourselves in a mirror. Okay, our next question. Please provide some insight into Ralph Lewis changing the term Cathedral of the Soul that H. Spencer Lewis set into place and was used in the past. Now the term celestial sanctum is used. So H. Spencer Lewis called what we call the celestial sanctum today, he called it the Cathedral of the Soul. And that is a fact. That name change was made. And I've never seen anything documented on why the change was made. H. Spencer Lewis was involved in his Methodist church. He had a strong religious upbringing. I think he had a strong Christian faith. And in my experience of the readings, of Ralph Lewis's works, I think he preferred a more scientific perspective. So this change happened when Ralph Lewis was the imperator. So I'm suggesting that as a possibility, but I don't know why the name Cathedral of the Soul was changed to the Celestial Sanctum. And then the descriptions are the same. It's the same space that exists beyond all time and space. All right, our next question. Why are men not allowed to enter our temples with caps or hats? And it's not just men, even women are asked to remove their hats unless a hat is worn or a head covering is worn for religious purposes. And then the person's very welcome to wear that into a convocation. And this is to show respect and reverence. It's considered more informal to wear a hat or a cap. And so out of respect, we're a little bit more formal. So we would remove our hats. And this is the case in some other situations as well. Here's our next question. I have a question about a theory regarding the formation of positive or negative thoughts throughout the day. These thoughts can arise under our control or beyond it. Through observation, I've noticed that individuals deeply entrenched in their religious beliefs tend to revert back to those beliefs instantly, often generating positivity because extremist thinking automatically reinforces their belief system. How can individuals cultivate creative and positive thinking if their thoughts are solely dominated by extremism, affecting not only themselves, but also those around them? So many of our monographs help us to better understand and be aware of our thoughts. And this is so valuable because many of our thoughts and actions are habitual. We, I think, all know that we were trained in these beliefs early on by our families, by our educational system, by society. So it's helpful to pause and consider what is going through our mind right now. And in cases where someone may become, as our person wrote, may become extreme, what would lead someone to become extreme? And there's been a lot of research in psychology on people, all of us, do things to protect ourselves. So sometimes people think a way of thinking is a matter of life and death. Like if you don't believe what I believe, it is the end of the world. It's a threat to me physically. We all protect our lives in some ways. So there's great value in observing ourselves and seeing if this is a habitual belief or if it's an actuality of the world around us. And to pause when we are especially fervent about it's just got to be this way, or I'm right and you're wrong, that we pause and observe what our thoughts are. So I invite you now to consider some ways that your thinking might be a way of protecting yourself. Like you hold this belief and you believe it is protecting you. And a good place to look to find this is, where are your thoughts rigid? Where is there no room for thinking in any other way? So what are some ways that your thoughts, you believe, well, what are some ways that your thoughts are intended to protect you? And by observing these thoughts, this doesn't mean that you're wrong. Maybe you're right. Maybe whatever the situation is extremely important. It does probably mean, though, that you are protecting yourself if you are very stuck in what that belief system is. So consider your thoughts about politics. Do you have any thoughts about politics or politicians that you can observe that you have very little wiggle room about, that you feel that you are right, and that people who feel differently from you, not only are they misguided or wrong, but they're a threat. They're a threat to other people. So just consider this. Anything related to politics. You know, we have the Rosicrucian contribution to peace. And it's also stated in the monographs that we're encouraged to be open to views that differ from ours or may actually conflict with them. And then we can decide, okay, I still believe what I believe, but I heard the other person. And even if you still think the other person is misguided and completely wrong, it may give you a better understanding of what the motivation is, what they're trying to protect themselves from. And that might give us a starting point. I remember a good example of this is two siblings who are considering what they need to do to take care of a parent, and they see it completely differently. And a good starting place is to say, even though I view what we should do completely differently, I know that you want what's best for Dad. Or I know that you want what's best for Mom or Grandma or whoever. So you come to a starting point, and it really eases the rigidness and the walls that don't allow for understanding. Now, that's not possible with everyone. And it's something you might be interested in experimenting with, just to see where you might have some common ground. Because let's say if it's with American politics, I believe that most people, including those with extreme views to either polarity, I believe they want what's best for America. They just view it. They view the way to do that differently. Another area we can consider our thoughts on is religion. What are your thoughts about your religion, if you practice a religion? And what would happen if you changed your religious beliefs? I'm not saying that you would convert to a different religion. Just what if you were open to seeing your religion from a slightly different perspective? This is addressed in our founding documents, the Rosicrucian manifestos. In the Fama Fraternitatis, it tells an allegorical story of a figure called Brother RC. And later he becomes Christian Rosenkreuz, an allegorical figure who is the originator of the Rosicrucian Order. So Brother RC is a boy, and his parents die. He lives in Germany, and he goes to a monastery, and one of the brothers wants to take him to Jerusalem. And on their way there, the brother dies. They're in Cyprus, and the brother dies. And then Brother RC, or Christian Rosenkreuz, he continues his journey and he finds these amazing traditions in Fez and Egypt and Damcar. And when he goes to Spain, he's so excited and he's ready to say, wow, I've learned all these things. And the people he comes in contact with there, that he comes in contact with there, want nothing to do with this knowledge that he brought from different perspectives. And why would that be? Why were the people in Spain not interested in what he had learned? Because it would undermine their belief system. Their belief system was so fragile that these new ideas would have put a crack in the foundation. So Brother RC goes back to Germany and he writes down everything that he learned on his journey, and it's telling the origin of our mystical tradition, that there are different things that were brought from other parts of the world. He put all this knowledge together, and at first he invited 3 other people to be part of the of his work, and then eventually 8 members were the originators of the Rosicrucian Order. And each of them agreed that they would go back to where they were from, and they would find ways that their knowledge could be updated. And when they came back, and this was a practice that began in Fez, when Brother RC visited the famous university in Fez, Morocco, they would do the same thing. Everybody would go back to their homes. They'd come back a year later, and they would celebrate when they could update their information. So in the same way, this was the origin of the allegorical origin of the Rosicrucian Order. So we have the opportunity to be aware of our thoughts. And one of the best ways to do that is to review at the end of the day our thoughts and our actions. This is a practice that the Pythagoreans used. Benjamin Franklin wrote about this. It's important in the Rosicrucian tradition to review our day and see where we could have done better and where we may have been on the mark and what we can learn or change. And then to commit ourselves to applying it the next time. Now that gets hard because when you're caught in the emotion of, well, even just everyday life, when you're just talking about things, we often don't pause to think about what we are thinking or expressing. So we can decide what we want to think if we allow a pause. If you find that you're reacting, we can train ourselves. So the next step is we can take a pause, and this allows us to be aware of what we're thinking, so that what was brought up in this question, what could be considered extremist thinking or really going off on a not on a habitual rant, we can pause and consider how we want to think. Okay, our next question is, what is AMORC's recently published book, Liber Lucis? And I'm going to read the description. This book is available on amorc.org, amorc.org. And when you go to the top of that page, there's a tab, and you just click Liber Lucis. It says, we visualize that this book of light will inspire seekers to come forth into the light of their own inner wisdom, to reflect mystically upon the challenges of life. The Liber Lucis aims to be a narrative guide for calling upon each individual to create their own manifesto, their own personal declaration to themselves about how they are going to contribute to restore, share, and protect the light of their spiritual nature and that of others. And then it's organized in the following topics. The first is reflections on nature, art, and earth. And some of the topics are guardians of the sacred flame, standing at peace with the imagination of eternity. The next topic is mystical expressions of the Rosicrucian Order. And then it's described the light of the invisible order, the primordial tradition, the mystical approach. And then the last focus area is finding the light in a world of information technology. And some of the subjects include a plea for the ethical use of technology, the counterbalance of daily spiritual practices, citizens of the world, a new paradigm. And then the final thoughts of Liber Lucis are the continuous search for divine purpose, what makes us truly human. And again, the Liber Lucis booklet, a book published by the Worldwide Rosicrucian Order, is available at AMORC.org. We have so much reading material. We have the Rose Quad Journal and all those fascinating papers. We have the Imperator's new book. We have the new Rosicrucian Forum, and we have the Liber Lucis, in addition to our most valuable monographs. Okay, so the next question. I gave birth to a son with autism when I was 16. It has always been incredibly difficult caring for him. Eventually, I began running from the responsibility, and he has been passed around from one family member or care home to another. I've tried many times over the years to care for him myself, and it always gets extremely overwhelming. My question is this: when I'm caring for him, I'm extremely stressed out. When I'm not caring for him, I'm feeling incredibly guilty. Is there a way to find any peace with this? Or is there a way I could perhaps care for him without getting so stressed out? Well, I can certainly feel how overwhelmed you are expressing yourself. And it sounds like it's overwhelming for you to take care of your son. I imagine being a single parent is a challenge, no matter what. Being any parent is a challenge, I believe. And there are Rosicrucian exercises for radiant health that help to take care of you so that you can take care of your son. And a great resource for this, of course, there's the monographs of the 6th degree, and there's also a special issue of the Rosicrucian Digest. And this is from 2019, issue number 2. The name of the issue is Radiant Health, and it provides techniques to create radiant physical health, mental health, emotional health, and spiritual health. And this is a great place. It's if you're overwhelmed, it's just going to be so challenging for you and for your son. And my suggestion would be to contact healthcare professionals who can provide support and resources to help you take care of your son. And sometimes there are many more resources than we're aware of. And if you can check in your local area to see what resources might be available to help you take care of yourself and to help you take care of your son.